Is this the first time we've met since last February?
Yep.
Yes.
We did.
Pat, you're free to proceed.
Thank you. Okay, we'll call this meeting to order. We'll do a roll call. Bruce Kaufman.
Present.
David Mann.
I'm right here.
Donna Mabry.
Here.
Susan Gay.
Here.
I'm Pat Calusi, chair of the committee. I don't believe Dan is here right now. We also are joined by Kevin Williams, Director of Public Works, Chief Keith Banks, and 3 members of the public who would wish to speak: Lydia Hastings, Gary Glass, and Walter Brittingham. If I may, so Lydia, could you tell me what you would like to speak on this time, today's meeting?
Good morning. Yes, just in relation to the transportation needs of Rehoboth and how Jolly Trolley fits into all of that.
Okay, so we're probably talking about the new business shuttle?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Oh.
Walter, are you on?
Good morning. Thank you for permission to join. I'd like the right to speak to anything, but if you'd ask me about after your discussion on any of the items, but I will probably pass on most of the issues. Thank you.
Okay. And Gary Glass.
I would like the opportunity to speak on any issue also, but most importantly, I'd like to speak on the shuttle service and citywide transportation needs.
Okay, very good. So just as a reminder to everyone, we only do have an hour. So I hope we can have an opportunity to address everything, although I know that some things will end up being put on the next agenda. I'm hopeful this group that we'll be able we'll probably need to meet a little bit more frequently in the very beginning, just to address some things that well, we have a fairly long list, and I'm sure there's other things that you all may have that you would like to see addressed as well. There has been some correspondence, but I don't believe it was to the Streets and Transportation directly. It was sent to the commissioners. I know that Gary Glass has sent letters to the commissioners in regard to the shuttle. And also, I believe that Suzanne Good also sent some emails to the commissioners. And those, if you haven't seen them, they can be forwarded to you. So you do have that information. Okay.
Yeah. Ann Womack forwarded me Gary's letter, but I haven't seen Suzanne's.
Okay.
So that could be forwarded?
Yes, we can. That can be.
Great.
It's also, I believe, available on online under the commissioners in the.
Yes, it's attached to the agenda for our meeting on Monday, this past Monday.
Yeah. So you can take a look at that.
Okay.
Okay. Let's go ahead and move on with old business. Is Kevin Williams here? Kevin? Okay, I don't believe he's here.
Pat, I have a technical question. Like,
yes.
I can hear Gary and Lydia and but I don't see them on my screen. Now, do they typically come up on the screen?
No.
Well, typically what people have done in the past, some people will choose to show video.
Yeah, there they are.
And they typically, if they are on video, they'll show their video when they are speaking. So there's not a confusion amongst other people about members of the
Okay,
committee.
so when they're speaking, they show up on the screen.
Right.
It's but not till then.
Yeah.
Okay.
And you can see that Walter is on by phone. So he has no opportunity to. show.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Only
Thank
committee
you.
members and presenters are on screen during these meetings. The public is not on video.
Okay. Thanks.
Okay, I wanted to share with you the Crosswalk status on Rehoboth Avenue. I know that's been a question, and I was, if Kevin were here, he would share this with you, but let me share his email to me. As you know, that the commissioners, with some input from the public, we're hoping to get some crosswalks with flashing lights when pedestrians are present. So what we have, they've been ordered, and let me tell you what the status is. According to Kevin, we have received all the parts for the rectangular rapid flashing beacons for the 3 selected uncontrolled crossings at City Hall, Christian Street, and 5th Street. We are in discussions with a contractor to construct the concrete footings for the rectangular rapid flashing beacons. We anticipate the footings to be completed this month, and the signage will be installed in early February. So that's a very good thing. I think everyone would agree to that, and I am very happy to see that. I did have a question for Kevin, and I will pose it in case there's anyone on the line. I don't know, Chief, anyone who else may know this. But my question was, the rest of the crosswalks do need to be refreshed. And I'm wondering, when the piano key type need to be refreshed? They're all faded away. I don't know if and when that's scheduled. Anybody? Maybe Susan, do you know anything about that?
No, I don't, but you're talking about the painted crosswalks.
Yes, just the painted ones.
You know, and I think this committee talked about having crosswalks at King Charles all the way down, and I had presented that last year, and I really wanted that last year, and it didn't make the budget. But then I don't know whether that kind of stuff is part of the capital budget anyway. I don't know. I don't think it's all that costly to do, but I don't know what the schedule is for repainting. It's a very good question we should ask.
Yeah, so the repainting and the crosswalks on King Charles themselves, that's like a separate thing that we do need to talk about.
Yeah.
That is on the agenda, but I'm just talking about the current ones
Yeah.
that just need to be refreshed. And I see the chief here.
Yeah.
Well, I think the other thing that I'd like to mention here with that, on those crosswalks where they are the brick crosswalks, I think there needs to be yellow paint around the brick areas till they stand out better. I think the brick just fades so into the pavement for drivers, they're not aware it's a crosswalk.
I absolutely agree with you. I think in the past, the one thing we did years ago when the streetscape first happened is we put some reflective tape, if you will, down. That's all pretty much worn off and needs either refreshed or painted.
I don't think the reflective paint is even enough. I think beside the reflective paint, if we added in some yellow striping, not on the brick itself, but on either side of the brick or the reflective paint, and the yellow will show up, and so people recognize it as a crosswalk.
Let's ask the chief to weigh in.
Well, I was just going to say that I know last year when this topic came up, speaking with the city manager, again, I do not want to speak for her or Kevin, that they were going to address it each spring as it comes along or whatever, and work with Bill from the sign shop that does the painting, his crew, when they come on in the spring, and start refreshing, try to get it a maintenance every year to refresh before the season starts. So I think you will see that, but it will be later, right before the season begins. However, I will follow up with the city manager and Bill and Kevin to make sure that's on the radar. And I will bring up the topic about a yellow outline.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, Chief, thank you. And it would be really helpful to have some sort of timeline. I know you say spring, but I also know how things get pushed around. If there isn't a specific date that we can look to, so we can say, this needs to happen.
Absolutely. I will, again, sit down with those three and see if we can't narrow down a timeline and get back with you.
Yeah. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Okay. So that's, let's see, crosswalk status on Rehoboth Avenue. why we've already talked a little bit about that. Anything else, David or Bruce? Do you have other things that regarding that statement?
Once you've seen the strobe lights, I think that the yellow paint may not be as necessary.
But I think there are other places, David, where they're not going to put the strobe,
Yeah.
or there's brick where there's not necessarily going to be a strobe light.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's true. I guess the question might be, I mean, from the point of view of aesthetics, I mean, white might be a better, reflective white might be better, but, you know, probably not for us to decide that specifically. I think if we ask for something to be done, and, you know, I don't know, anybody else have a feeling, yellow or white? Anyone else have a particular desire and what they think?
The only thing I will add, if I may, is we'll have to look at the uniform traffic code, because that dictates what colors stripings are and all that. So that's why I'll bring Bill into it and Kevin to the equation. So it may not even be legally possible. That's going to be our manual that the state of Delaware follows, and on its national standards, if there can be a color change or another color in front of the white. And also, again, we will look at that, and I'll report back with that information as well as the time.
Okay, excellent.
The goal was to get the uncontrolled intersections covered, which is what's in play, going in play now.
Right. Okay. Anything else on this topic? Walter, would you like to comment? Walter, are you there?
No comment.
Okay, thank you.
No comment.
Gary Glass?
No comment.
Okay, thank you. Okay, the next topic is LED lighting at the traffic circle. Perhaps, David, you would like to address this. This was on the agenda from last time. And of course, I was not present for the meeting, although I've read the minutes and everything. I appreciate it if you would address this topic.
It got on the agenda after a conversation that I had with Chief Banks. We were uncertain at the time what effect Rise Up would have on lighting at the circle. But when the 7-Eleven closed, it got a little dark there. So it's one of the things that the chief wanted to get addressed. And I think we've gotten that behind us, but I'll defer to him on that.
Chief?
Yeah, yes, thank you. I think it is behind us, but we always keep monitoring that, and any changes on streetlights on Rehoboth Avenue that Kevin is working on at different times, and the commissioners that would be included. It was awfully dark there, but since Rise Up came in and they lit up their parking lot and did some changes, it has been much better, and the concerns haven't been there.
Okay. Anyone else have comments on that?
Well, that circle is just so dangerous. Whatever lots needs to be done. So, you know, I think lighting is really critical. Visibility at the traffic light. If the city hasn't added any lights, I think the city needs to be thinking about that, especially if there's more development. If clear space goes in there, and there's a lot of pedestrian traffic in the evening coming and going from performances, it's going to be critical to have good visibility. And I mean, people have been complaining about it now, what the lighting has been, and there's not been any addition since those complaints. And so I think it should be high on the city's radar, any opportunity to add lighting.
Susan, Bruce, or David, comments?
I am worried about the changes that are being made to the bike lane feeding in from Junction Breakwater over the drawbridge coming inbound on the wrong side of the road, to the park, where are these bikes going to go? They're basically being fed into the north side of the circle. That, I think that the bike lanes coming in there are going to call the question on something at the circle. I don't know what. I don't have in my mind a solution, but I can see a real problem coming. Maybe I'm idealistic, but it seems like DelDOT should be brought in to help reconfigure that whole crazy intersection.
Definitely. Well, it's theirs anyway.
It's theirs, and they're clearly far more bicycle friendly than the city is.
Well, yeah, that's another agenda item we may or may not get to today.
I agree. I think it's very confusing to have a bike lane going the wrong direction on the wrong side of the road. You know, or what I find, I haven't biked there much lately, but even going west out of Rehoboth, you find a lot of pedestrians walking towards you in the bike lane, and you're at a point like, what do? You know, that like they're right in your way. You can't veer to the left into traffic. I think it's very confusing.
I think you're right. I think the goal probably, they thought it would just be people will make a left turn and take the bike path. Well, that's just wishful thinking, because that's not always the way people want to go, right? So it is an issue. I do agree with that. And I suspect perhaps we ought to invite, I guess is it Anthony Aglio to perhaps be a part of, to perhaps answer some questions for us, and maybe.
I actually talked to Anthony about this. The rest of the story is he's my boss, but and we don't agree on this particular thing. DelDOT has recently had a habit of putting bicycles in two directions on the same side of the road. They're talking about doing it again on Munchie Branch. I think it's a easier way to do it. But anyway, I told him personally, as a cyclist, I'm never going to go down that. I'm going to take Church Street out to Rehoboth, wait my turn, and head in. And there's a bike lane there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Until you get to the bridge, and then the bike lane is gone. But anyway, I think a conversation with Anthony or his team would be a good place to start.
Yeah.
Because I assume you guys know that DelDOT is acquiring land behind the motel. They're going to run the bike lane from Hebron straight through, get off of Church, straight through to the sidewalk, and then route the bikes into town. So I think we're going to see the bike traffic skyrocket.
Yeah.
Because coming down Hebron, you're going to now see Welcome to Rehoboth straight ahead. And I think maybe the pandemic is going to postpone it, but eventually I think we're going to be shocked at the volume of pedestrians and bicycles on that one side of Rehoboth Avenue.
But that's not going to solve the problem of the side, right? Of the
no.
Okay.
Steve, can you tell me, do you know of any issues or accidents or problems that we've had on the dual bike lanes? Way bike lanes, I guess is what you call it.
Yes, I'd have to double check on this, but to my knowledge, there's been no accidents or anything since they've reinstalled that. You know, it's like anything else. There's near misses. There's like was already mentioned, pedestrians walking. But for the most part, it is working. As a public safety aide, yes, I never like to see where the state law tells you to go one way, and this is kind of forcing you to go the opposite way.
Yeah.
again, we had to do something. Now, obviously, the improvements are better than what was there. Is it perfect? Is it ideal? Probably not. But as far as to answer your question, at this point in time, we haven't had any accidents with pedestrians or bicyclists.
Well, I think it's very confusing to have two-way traffic on a bike lane or bikes going against the traffic, because we work so hard to educate bikers to follow the law, the regulations with automobiles, that you drive with automobiles. And then here we create these bike lanes. It's just the opposite.
Part of what you're dealing with is outside of the city limits. It's Del Dot turf. And so we've jumped down now to topic number 9. There's going to be a bi-directional bike lane on the north side of Rehoboth Avenue from the Canal Bridge to Church Street, where the new cut through will come through the new glass, whatever it is, motel. So we're going to have cyclists will still take Church, turn left at the light, and come up the south side of Rehoboth Avenue. But cyclists are not who we're trying to protect. The cyclists know what to do. It's the people that are not cyclists, the people that ride their bicycle 1 week a year or 2 weeks a year. And there's been explosive growth in the bicycle business, and none of these people are getting educated on how to ride properly on the street. So with the bi-directional bike lanes and the new cut through, it's going to be even more challenging on that gateway. And then people are going to come to the museum and they're going to have to get off their bike and get on the sidewalk or go around behind Grove Park. It's going to be a real challenge.
Yeah.
David, you're right. And we did topic number 9 is kind of, we
skipped
into
ahead
that now because of these two things are very much related. This clearly is something that deserves a lot of conversation. And I will ask the public to weigh in, but one of the things I would like to do, if it's okay with everyone, is just put this on the next agenda so we can spend more time talking about it, because you're right, it's going to potentially be a real issue. If it's okay with everyone, I'm going to go to the public right now. So Walter Brittingham, do you have any comments? Walter, are you there?
Bicycles, but the LED lighting, is a line item on the new budget for, I think, $205,000 for Rehoboth Avenue. Also, the roses have been chopped down outside of town. And as regards to bicycles at the traffic circle when they're coming in, there is no sign at the end of the city's new demarcation for the bicycle lane that you're supposed to be off the sidewalk, or excuse me, you're not supposed to be two-way anymore, and you are no longer allowed to be opposing traffic. You got to comply with Rehoboth's laws for sidewalks, or you need to be over on the eastbound side of Rehoboth Avenue, that you're no longer allowed to be coming face up against people leaving town at the traffic roundabout. Thank you.
Thank you, Walter.
That's a very good point, Walter. Thank you.
Gary, comments?
Yes, I think it's a good discussion. The only other comment I'd make is, and I agree with everything you said, is that when they put the traffic circle in, it was Del Dot pushing it, and the flow of traffic was what was so important to Del Dot at the time. I think when Clear Space Theater and the bikes and the cars, who nobody knows who has the right of way now, I think when it gets so much more congested with the clear space pedestrians, it's going to cause a huge backup in both directions at the traffic circle, defeating what the Del Dot wanted to do. That's my only comment, and it's something that we'll have to deal with along the way, I guess.
Right. Thank you. So we will put this on our next agenda to speak with this at length. And I think perhaps we should consider asking Anthony to attend this meeting, and we can bring up some of these things, and where it ends up going with Del Dot, who knows? But it's, as David, you mentioned, it's only going to get worse. And
Right.
hopefully, people won't.
The
get hurt.
education process is going to become harder every single day.
Right, right. Okay,
Right.
yes. Somebody else gonna say something? Okay, let's move on then to the crosswalks on
Sure.
King Charles. So do we currently have piano keys at all painted across King Charles, the crosswalks? There's just nothing there?
There's nothing there. It stops at the church and everybody's on their own for the widest street in the city.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So this is probably a question for the chief. Do you have to have ADA compliant, well, where the intersections are, I guess, in order to have piano keys or the painted crosswalks, or can you go ahead just for the point of safety to have those painted crosswalks, even if there isn't ramps for ADA?
I'm going to kind of skirt it down the middle here because I think you can, in some situations, you can without having to have the handicap ramps and things, ADA compliance. But you should be shooting for that. I would suggest if we do anything on King Charles, that it's continuous from the ones on the sidewalk we already have them. I think most of the streets on King Charles already have the ADA compliance. So I think at each intersection, maybe it's just one that's continuous. So you don't have people constantly crossing back and forth on the sidewalks. So I think if you shot straight across where it is already continuous and I think already has ADA, I think that would be a much better approach.
So are you saying that really the only thing that needs to happen is the painted crosswalk on that, in that particular instance?
I'd have to look at each street. I don't have it up right now, so I don't want to say, but my recognition is that most of the side streets down there have some type of somebody may correct me on that, because again, I ride it almost every day, but I guess I just don't know.
Yeah, yeah. But are you saying, Chief, that wherever there's currently ADA curbing to put paint on crosswalks at those intersections, and that where they don't have the ADA, because I think there are, as you go down King Charles, I think like Hickman, I think they've done the curbing there on Hickman, but I don't know further south of that. But are you sort of saying wherever there is the ADA crosswalks currently to do the painting?
Well, I think you could do that. And I'd work with the city engineers, well, basically Kevin and city manager and Bill, because they're the so-called experts that monitor that ad and where it's possible, and if we haven't done it, why haven't we? So maybe they have some input that I'm not aware of. But again, the input that I have is if it's already set up for ADA and it is continuous or whatever across, I think that would be the best place to put a crosswalk if it's allowed. And I don't know any reason why it would not be.
It looks like every intersection there is ADA compliant.
Yeah.
And the striping ends at Hickman Street. And from Hickman Street south, there are no stripes across King Charles.
So I think you would probably could add to that ad if it truly does have all ADA compliant.
Every one of them on the satellite looks like they're there.
Okay. So where it's at is where I would recommend it does, because I think we should always try to make sure it's everybody can use it safely.
I mean, is this the kind of thing that would have to go in the capital budget, or is it, or not?
I don't think so. I think it would be minimal, but again, Bill from the sign shop knows exact prices and all what it would cost, but it probably would be minimal.
And there's Kevin or somebody.
Yeah.
Hey, Kevin.
Kevin, like we can't hear you. We can't hear you, Kevin. Still can't hear you. Somehow you are. No.
I will run upstairs.
Can you join by phone, Kevin?
Maybe he can read lips. Kevin, we can't hear you.
He knows we can't hear him.
He can hear you. His mic isn't working.
Your mic.
Can you join by phone? Can you call in?
Let me go to the public while Kevin is trying to get on. Walter Brittingham, do you have any comments?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. The mayor is our expert in my professional opinion, but you all need to be reappraised of the fact that when you have a differential between the sidewalk where you don't have the curb cuts put in at the corner, you also have to have one on the other side to be sure a person on the wheelchair can get down and get back up on the other side. And you may recollect some of your own discussions in the past where there's been presentations that the state wanted to see, I think it was the state wanted to see a bump out because you were also looking to slow up speed so that when you came down from the Catholic Church, we'll just say at Hickman, that you not only would see a crosswalk, but you would see a bump out to slow traffic up, to narrow the street to help control the speed item. And the ADA, I go back to the mayor, is probably our best expert and probably can tell you what happens. But out on the highway, when they got ready to do the sidewalks out there from Baker's Exxon across the county bank, there were no sidewalks on the other side, so they couldn't put in a curb cut. So it is a whole picture. I think it needs ramps to be compliant. And they wanted the bump outs for the speed reduction as you went down that long street. And back to, I think if you talk to the mayor, you'll have all the information you need. Thank you.
Thank you, Walter. Gary, would you like to make comment?
I'm good.
Okay, thank you. Kevin, we still can't hear you, just so you know.
I believe his microphone needs to be changed.
Working on it, looks like. Shame.
In his
Combo
audio
check.
settings. There we go.
All right, thanks.
Hey.
Yeah, I think Walter just touched on what I was going to tell you is if you go to the manual on crosswalks, because of the distance between on King Charles, it requires an island, to be in compliant.
Oh, really?
In that case, it's not just a matter of doing the stripes, which I think, as Chief said, would be very simple to do and would not require anything in the CIP, I don't believe. But I think if we get into the island making business and selecting where we want to put them, that's got to work its way, I think, through the CIP. So if we want to make that recommendation to the board, say, hey, we want to do one, pick the location and where we've had the most number of incidents over the past or whatever, if any. But I think it would require an island, a safe haven for the pedestrians that are crossing.
Kevin, could the island be a painted island or does it have to be physical construction like a median?
You really need some sort of barrier there to protect the people that are in there. You can imagine trying to cross there and getting in the middle, and typically there's a curb system of something to designate an island just to protect.
Could it be like the delineators they put on Rehoboth Avenue Extended? I'm just looking at it from a cost standpoint, because if you get into construction, then it adds a lot of dollars compared to just putting paint across there.
Sure. Yeah, it's my understanding, not being the expert, but it's my understanding that it does require a physical barrier. I don't think those delineators that we have on the bike trail, as you were talking, coming across the bridge, I don't think that would serve the purpose.
Well, we could always go with something that's not very attractive, so that we now own some of those red Jersey walls, if you will.
Yeah, that's pleasant.
Yeah,
well, I think I'd say just leave it as it is rather than adding an island or going to a lot of expense and barriers.
I didn't realize that.
What Kevin's saying is we would have to have an island.
Yeah.
Well,
we talked about King Charles.
You would have to be. Whether you want to be in compliance or not is another question.
And it's because of the width. Is that right?
Mm-hmm. Okay. I think as Walter was mentioned when we were trying to get hooked up.
Well, we had talked about on King Charles also that they might change the parking situation, and that we might create a a bike lane on King Charles. Remember, there was a lot of discussion about that.
Yeah,
That if
ago.
they did, that when we were talking about doing head-in parking all the way down King Charles, and how if to gain parking, and then if that were to happen, well, it's dangerous to bikers, so maybe we would create a bike lane between the sidewalk and the parking. And so you need that space on King Charles. I wouldn't see putting in some kind of islands or something in the middle and take that space away.
It's interesting what you bring up, Donna, because years ago, the Streets and Transportation, we had the study done for bicycle pedestrian master plan, and we actually talked about a bike lane in the median, believe it or not. And so that would maybe serve two purposes.
Yeah.
I don't know, but it could be something that we would talk to Anthony about in terms of perhaps getting a grant for such a thing, if that's something that we as the transportation committee would want to recommend. I right now don't know if that's the best solution, but in any case, it is potentially an option. King Charles, one of the other things I think is important for King Charles are those silent policemen too. For crosswalks, it would be such a huge area. I doubt that, two silent policemen would be, necessarily a good place to stop as a pedestrian, but it would be a barrier, at least one not physical, that would keep people from not, potentially being injured, but it would be there. The car would have to run over it, I suspect. But it's definitely, food for thought, because I do agree that people want to cross. Ideally, we'd want people to park farther away from the middle of town and go to the beach on those ends, and people feel like they could cross the street with their children without fearing for their lives.
Right. And actually, I find the traffic on King Charles goes pretty slow. I cross there a lot. And because of the church and the way the parking, just coming out of town, the traffic is going pretty slow to begin with. It's really at the southern end of King Charles when there's not much activity, where people start picking up speed. So I think drivers are very good about making sure people are crossing, and they allow bikes to go, they allow kids to go. So, and I just think on Rehoboth streets, everything's so congested. We need space. We shouldn't give the space over to islands and things like that. That doesn't allow, that slows the traffic down so much, it makes it more congested.
Other comments?
Like while we're on that, the thing that I'm most concerned about, and is that the other day I walked by and checked out what's happening on the Lake Avenue extension there. And I'm very concerned about how they have narrowed those streets. They're creating where they made the curb bump outs. There is really only one lane, only one car could go by. There wouldn't be room for a car and a bike to get through there. And I'm even wondering if the lane that they've left is even big enough for the trash trucks and things like that. So there they've taken the space out. They've created bottlenecks to slow down traffic. It's going to be a real congestion point, and I'm very concerned about it. And I really think the city should look at it now. I would encourage everybody on the committee to go look at what's happening before they lay the pavement.
I don't interrupt you, but this is not on our agenda, so it's really not something we should address at this moment. I do agree that it's something important, and because you've mentioned it, I'm sure Mr. Williams will take that into consideration and perhaps find out if we've got any issues at the present time.
I bring it up because it's very timely, and just that the city needs to look at that if they really want it, because if they want to make design changes, now's the cheapest time to do it.
Truly.
But just talking about,
we've got 20 minutes to cover everything else on this
Yeah,
agenda.
right. I was just gonna
Right.
say.
So I would just offer very quickly, that, you know, one of the main purposes of the streetscape project on Lake Avenue is to make it safer. So it was a conscious effort to narrow the street so it's not a two-way, people guessing which lane they're supposed to be in. So it was a conscious decision to try to make that more safe. And it is tighter, but it is 12 feet minimum width, which is, you know, the width of a lane, you know, out on a highway. So there's plenty of room to get through there safely. You're coming off of now a four-way stop sign. So I know everybody, they look at it and go, oh, it's different. It's, you know, it's so much smaller and narrower. It's, you know, people are going to run into it. Well, it was built that way to slow the traffic down there and make it safer for people to cross the street. So I think it's going to serve the purpose that it was intended to serve. Now, is it going to be as big and wide open? No, but it was done that intentionally. And then the other comment, because when my mic was not working, back on the Canal Bridge and the bike lane, I would suggest that I think DelDOT just move the congestion from Church Light, the light at Church and Rehoboth, into the traffic circle.
Yeah.
So they tried to solve a problem out there, which was a significant problem. If you try that in the morning when people are coming in and out, and then you got the rush hour traffic coming in and out, that light and the bikes traveling on the south side of Rehoboth Avenue coming in is an issue. So they tried to address that problem with the new cut through behind the motel, and keep everybody on that side of the street. But they haven't solved any of the issues that then causes on our side of the bridge when they get around that circle. But I think that was a conscious decision on their part to mitigate Church Light. And now let's see what happens at the circle and see what we would need to do then subsequent to that. But Anthony's the guy to definitely address it for us.
We're going to need to just try to move forward with a few more of these. We certainly will keep on our agenda the last two items, including the crosswalks, to be discussed in more detail. The Surf Avenue bike lane, which is next on the agenda. Yeah, I've been down there looking at that, and it will take away parking, but I do agree it's an issue. It's a real easy place to be doored if you're traveling in the, you know, down the road there without being in traffic. That, you know, the possibility of a bicyclist being doored is real. And it would be great to do that. I don't know, and I've thought in this, ideally we could just do that. I don't know if we can do that or if the commissioners will want to see that happen, because it does take away some parking. Although it's not revenue to the city, it does take away parking. Ideally, wouldn't it be nice to be able to have a bike lane that goes basically through the land there and down towards Deauville Beach? But I don't even know if that's possible. And of course, that would be a CIP item. And so we're certainly not there yet, or we may not have to get there. But I think that I'd like to hear what you all think about the bike lane on Surf Avenue.
Well, you jump down to Cycling Gateway. We can't control Rehoboth Avenue extended across the Canal Bridge. We can control Surf Avenue, it's in the city. And that is a huge bicycle gateway. This all began with Keith Banks and I talking about what issues, where do we need help? And Surf Avenue is where we need help. And so there was a whole detailed conversation about what to do there to make it bicycle friendly, make it safer, remove the non-direct revenue parking either to city streets or to the Deauville Beach lot. That's kind of where we were not quite a year ago.
Other comments? Bruce, Susan, Donna?
I thought we had identified this as a priority, and right, David?
Yes.
And
Okay.
so I would love to move forward with it, whether, and even if it's a request, a budget request, and I don't know if we can do it soon enough to get in this cycle or not, but.
Well, I don't believe it would be a budget request, Susan, but I think that you and I certainly could speak in favor of this at a commissioner meeting.
Yeah, okay.
What it does require is making it a no parking zone, and I don't see that as being, related to
in terms of the whole, bike path and everything.
And then one thing that Walter thoughtfully brought up in the past was that we would still need to have a drop-off area for people bringing all their stuff to the beach. So there'd have to be some type of space or a little bit more extra space, some type of drop-off zone at the beach openings.
Hmm. Chief, I know that, whoop,
Yeah.
there he goes. I know you've been a party to this conversation in the past, so would you like to talk about this a little bit more?
Yeah, I think if you decide to get rid of the parking spaces, it helps the situation, because before, I've been down there many times with the city engineer as well as the city manager, and then it got into how much room do we have to put a bike lane, and then it narrows the streets, and then we even had DelDOT out there to see where their jurisdiction runs into the closer you get to Henlopen Avenue and stuff like that. So, but it was always, when we met, we were talking about still having parking there. So I think if the city decides to eliminate some parking, I think that helps the situation. But again, I think it's not a quick fix. So Kevin might be able to jump in here, but I think it needs to be looked at and make sure all the measurements make sense. And if you're having two-way bike traffic on one side, or just the one way, or you're trying to do it on both sides. So I think it needs to be discussed, but it does make it easier when you decide to get rid of the parking.
Sure, and thanks, Chief. We did have, if you the commissioners may recall, we made a presentation, last year about a concept for that bike connection to get you from, the basically North Shores up Surf, and a piece of that is state owned, but into kind of the parking lot area, the triangle area there by the Henlopen condos, as part of the gateway to the northern part of the city, right? To have a nice gateway in, had separate bike lanes that fed into that parking lot for access to the boardwalk, and then also around to get into the downtown area. So we presented that as a concept a year ago. It really didn't get a lot of traction, but I would throw that out there. There are some thoughts, on paper as to what could be done out there. You might want to take a look at that and see if that's something. Maybe you want to take a piece out of that gateway concept, just to a part of it or something. But
could you forward that on to us, Kevin?
Sure.
Or at least to me, and I can forward it to the rest of the.
Was that part of the Beach and Boardwalk Committee's plan about that end of the boardwalk? I'm trying to remember.
I think they dovetailed.
Okay, yeah, I'd like to.
Clearly they dovetail, because everything that the Streets and Transportation, a lot of things the Streets and Transportation Committee want to do, the Beach and Boardwalk Committee don't want to do.
Right.
Goes back to the whole lights. We want it brighter to be safer, but we want it to be darker so we can see the stars. So I'll just throw that out there. As those are the competing interests we deal with, Chief and I, every day, right? It's too dark. Oh, it's not dark enough. It's too dark. It's not dark enough. So I'll forward that. But I'll forward you the presentation we made on that north gateway to the city.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But I think in that discussion about a bike lane along Surf, didn't it involve quite a bit of paving, repaving? Because on either side, the shoulders along that area, there's gravel, and that to really create a safe bike lane, you should have good pavement where you're not going off into rough territory.
Northbound would be all pavement, and it just needs a stripe, no cars. Really simple.
Okay, let me go to the public here. Walter?
Thank you. Surf Avenue is a subject that should be a subject of its own. In the past year, the city has authorized on the west side between two blocks putting stone in. It was done piecemeal. It could be done in one meeting, a simple plan without an engineer to draw it. When you come around from the Henlopen, it's fine until you have the bump out at Oak Avenue that falls into the domain of DNREC. So DNREC ought to be at the meeting, and there's plenty of room. But once you get around to Deauville Beach, and it goes back to when the city manager first came on board, you have people parking right in front of the entryway to the Deauville Beach parking lot. And it just needs to have some away from the entranceway. No parking, unloading only, but not at the entranceway. You need to lose a couple parking spaces, but once you get past Park Avenue all the way down to Route 300, and in light with the Mr. Biden coming into town, there's going to be some things changing, but it needs a meeting of its own, and we shouldn't be discussing this another year because it's not going to get done if you don't do it that way. And if you can pave, allow somebody to put stone, participant of the city and an owner, between two blocks, you can open it up and straighten out the rest of it for not a lot of money. Thank you.
Thank you, Walter. Gary Glass. Gary, are you there?
Trying to unmute. No comment.
Okay. This is another topic that's a very important topic, and I agree with Walter that it is probably a meeting that it's going to involve many others, and we really need to jump on this if we can. So we'll put that in the near future to deal with. I want to go ahead and continue to move forward. We now have 10 minutes left, so it's clear that we are going to have to address all these other things at another meeting, not to mention the things that we've already talked about that are going to require a lot more time. So let's go ahead to the city bike loop. Would someone like to, David, maybe you can introduce this topic?
The city bike loop has been a topic of conversation going back as far as I could go back and research 10 years. It's been created, it's been put on the maps, it exists, it is rarely utilized because today everyone is doing what I'm doing and pulling their phone out and using this as their map. So what I thought made the most sense is for us to talk to Google and have Google Maps put the bike loop in. So when a person clicks on the bicycle icon for how to get somewhere, it takes them around the loop. Now, can anybody from the city talk to Google? I have no idea. But the paper maps are hardly used anymore. There's some at the ferry terminal, and there's some at the visitor center, but people get their bicycles, they jump on and they go. They know where they're going and they go right down Rehoboth Avenue. And part of what Bruce and I discussed not too long ago was there's enough width on Rehoboth Avenue to have bike lanes all the way up to 2nd Street. So the bike loop's there. Nobody really, I would say living on Canal Street, a lot of people follow it. The people that are conditioned veterans know to turn right on Canal Street and stay off Rehoboth Avenue. But the people that don't are the ones that aren't using the map. They're using their phones.
Well, I can't imagine it would be too difficult to get with Google. And in fact, Bruce, you might be able to help us out here. I assume that with the state, with being as bicycle friendly as they're trying to be and what they've been trying to do, that there hasn't been some communication there. Can you give us any information on that?
I personally am not aware of any communication. The guys in Dover are pretty clear that there's a line when you enter Rehoboth, they back off. So almost everything we do with bicycle routes and lanes cross between the state and the town, and it's got to be a collaborative effort. And on this general topic, I thought the study that you referred to was that like 2012.
2012 is the big book that I gave you.
Yeah, that I think actually had a lot of solutions in there that haven't been implemented, that we got to blow the dust off of some of that.
Absolutely.
No, I agree. I mean, I was there for that. I was chair of streets transportation and was working directly with the consultant and the group. We had a lot of public meetings and had input from everyone. And so, yes, I have my copy right here. And yeah, we can talk some more about that. But yeah, it's an issue. But David, you bring up a really interesting point. Back then, I would have never even thought about Google using Google Maps, to get around. And you're right. Just like people do in so many other things, real estate even. People find houses because they have their cell phone. People, they come to the farmers market, in fact, because they've checked their cell phone and find out it's there. So yeah, there's a lot to be said for that.
Yeah.
So,
I think it's a great idea.
5-minute warning, Pat, 5-minute warning.
Yeah, really.
I think we're probably going to have to stop here. And Lydia, I apologize that that we didn't get to you, and hopefully we get to you next meeting. But I guess we ought to think about scheduling next meeting. But I don't think I've gone to the pub to Gary or Walter on this city bike loop. Walter, do you have any comments in terms of the city bike loop?
No comment.
Gary?
No comment.
Okay. Just quickly, let me just say this, and maybe I can share my screen. I don't know, I haven't done this before, but I will just quickly talk about the crosswalks on State Road. Kevin, that information was shared with us at the commissioners meeting, and I do have the graphic that is going to move forward. So I will read to you. We have completed the traffic count study and are proceeding with the final design and permitting for a pedestrian crosswalk at the intersection of State Road and Munson/Grove Streets. We have included money in the draft 2022 budget to construct the crossing. So that should be a reality, actually, for this year. And as far as sharing my screen, I don't know where I would do that. I'll tell you what. Oh, wait a minute. Share.
Cursor over it, and you'll see it at the bottom next to the word participants. It says share, but you have to cursor over it for those to come up.
Yep.
Okay.
There it is.
Yep.
So you can answer any questions about this if anyone has any, but that will be the crossing will be at Munson/Grove and State Road. So it's in the budget. It's in the budget. Susan and I, we will try hard to make sure that it stays in the budget.
Oh yeah, yeah, it should.
Yeah. So there's two votes there.
Yeah.
So I will email this copy to you all as well, so you will have it. But right now I'd like to, let's see, stop sharing. I would like to talk about our next meeting. As we've hardly made a dent in things. I'm glad that we did get to spend an hour starting this, and I'm very pleased, actually, and excited to be chair of this group. I was chair a long time ago, and I hope that we can move forward with a lot of these initiatives. I know Susan and I feel very strongly about a lot of these things, and we certainly will put our best foot forward at commissioner meetings to do this. But 2 more minutes, but I've got, how about 2 weeks from now, today, if Thursday's a good day for everyone, let's have our next meeting, and we'll make it 10 o'clock as opposed to 9. Okay?
Sounds good.
Sounds good.
Will there be an attempt to have a regular day and time, or are we going to wing it for a while till we catch up?
I'd like to do that. How about Thursdays at 10 a.m.? I guess every 2 weeks. Does that sound like a reasonable time frame?
With 1 hour meetings, isn't it? Yeah, we're going to need to do it fairly frequently to get down this list.
Yeah.
Well, the only thing I would say is the agenda out pretty immediately, but that's not that hard if you want to try to move it up to every week right now. What's your pleasure?
I think every week is a little much.
Yeah.
Okay. Then as I had suggested, then.
I think if we do every 2 weeks and we get caught up, then we could be a little more casual about it, like maybe monthly.
That sounds
Right.
reasonable to me.
A lot of it, Pat, has to do with what type of activity we get from the city to whether we're seeing progress or not.
Mhm.
I understand. Well, as I said, both Susan and I are really good at opening our mouths at the commissioner meeting, so.
Well, and actually, I think this arrangement with having a commissioner as the chair, so I like the way that it's been restructured, because we know we've got a direct link to the commissioners, and the commissioners have a direct link to us. So I think that helps with some of the flow of information and getting things implemented, which we struggled with at the with the prior organization.
Yeah, well, so we will move forward, and it's 10 o'clock now, so I thank you all, and I will see you in 2 weeks. It's 10 a.m.
Thank you.
Great.
Yeah,
Thank
thank
you.
you.